We live within a entertainment, media, mind control matrix of sorts, where even though, right, it's therapeutic to a certain degree to laugh, nothing wrong with a little bit of comedy. I'm not really knocking that. It's the idea that over time, the masses are pacified by humor. And so we can look at The Daily Show, and I'm discussing this from a nonpartisan perspective. So I got involved when George W. Bush was the president, first with cable access TV, then with YouTube. And I've seen the rise in popularity around people like Jon Stewart, who formerly hosted The Daily Show, and the rise of popular memes within our dumbed down society that, well, we can't trust the mainstream media, but I get my news from The Daily Show. And now in today's day and age, a lot of people get their information from Facebook while falsely thinking they're woke, while believing certain headlines are real just because they seem to be shared by their peers. So, there's an overall picture that I'm trying to paint here, and it's about being distracted from the greater things that we should be focused on. Not revolution, not violence, but I won't even say necessarily resistance, peaceful action, waking up, going around the system, building community. Some things are more important than money. And so it's really easy. I'm going to show you some examples here. For the masses, when they're seeing something that's perceived to be wrong, and we have a situation now, but we also did during Barack Obama, a continuation of centralization of power, the expansion of the military-industrial complex, and runaway debt to China, amongst many other issues. What the entertainment matrix, mind control matrix does is a number of things. In a divide and conquer game, by the way, those that have their political allegiances are also going to be really angry at SNL, and they're going to be angry at some of the caricatures of the president without even realizing behind the scenes, Donald Trump, like Barack Obama, like Bush, they're probably in reality okay with a certain level of criticism. And there's the way in which the mapping of the current political dramas and issues are put out in the mainstream media, and people will bounce off certain issues back and forth, back and forth. It's the control topics and then the ways in which they make humor around that, when in reality something entirely more important is going on with our government. There could be something, for example, like a caravan. And it can be literally something that's used as a talking point for left and the right for them to focus on it. And it can be like a big, big deal in the news cycle. And even within this is another topic, but we are seeing the rise in fear in general. It's beyond Islam, but we're talking about people from the Middle East. And so there's a big focus on not so much Islam or ISIS, but allegations that there are people potentially of Middle Eastern origin in this caravan, and all of the feelings that that brings up for the predictive programming, of course, for the next manufactured event. And I think that we could be on schedule for that, and I hope that doesn't happen. But in other videos, I've talked about the potential for something like that to be manufactured to take us deeper into the next stage of things. But things like this, topics like that, are also laughed at and mocked by the dominant, what's called the dominant left media, but it's also right-wing as well, although they're not as heavy on the comedy side of things. When people look at Stephen Colbert and his bit on the caravan, he's bringing attention to what some could see as the ridiculous nature of the propaganda, and that it's building towards something. What I'm saying to you is, people just sitting by laughing at what's taking place and relieving their own stress is a coping mechanism, but that coping mechanism is a way that we are controlled basically from our own desires to be entertained. Are you entertained? And see, using an example of the Bush administration, the comedy that was alive during that time, a lot of people saw these comedians as the way out of the control structure. Even with statements, I get my news from The Daily Show, or from a less comical level and more serious, I get my news from RT, as some people think they were going outside the paradigm then, going outside the Western dominated mainstream media then, but it still really leads back to some of the same deceptions as we move closer to the next conflict. So showing you an example here, and just a little bit of audio of what I'm trying to describe here.
Congress is in recess through the election. Congress isn't in D.C. Where did Congress go? Could they be in the caravan?
So basically, essentially what I'm describing to you, it's the funny man complex, even his own narcissism. I never really liked this particular individual because it almost seems like, we're just laughing at the madness. We're just laughing at, and I'm just using the caravan as an example. I can use countless videos. This isn't so much about politics, but just highlighting the bread and circus reality. Everything's a joke. Here, we're exposing this goofy president, but you're not exposing the system. Now, I will say I've made many videos saying that a lot of these politicians seem to deliberately act less intelligent in some cases than they are, and I've seen a progression throughout the presidencies of Bush, which was 8 years, and Obama, which is 8 years. Trump, we could be looking at 8 years. If there is some sort of impeachment, it's a manufactured event to get the people fighting within the nation. And I think a lot of people don't want that. They don't want the fight within the nation, but impeachment would just continue the same system under Pence. So that's not really fixing it. That's a side topic, but we've seen this with George W. Bush and what appeared to be fake news then about plans for impeachment. And it really whipped up the masses for a false sense of hope. And so that could also be what we're looking at here, just this false sense of hope. So the media, with their jokes, and we talk about Saturday Night Live, it is something that keeps the masses busy and thinking that they're winning. There's a lot of things that have been put out there in the media, including Hollywood, that amps up fear of the state. So it really amps up kind of the idea of the false hero, false archetype of the Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, and others. Saviors of the new free world. Of course, I see more people in color in both the media and both entertainment. And while also they bring up certain issues, for example, like racism, I don't really think that it is a media that's trying to mediate those actual issues. And so there is the facade of winning. There is the facade of certain people moving up in the world, but some of the same systemic problems continue as people laugh to the next soundtrack. And that's the real narration to what's taking place, the role that Stephen Colbert has to play and others. And then people falsely think that they're fighting the system. I want to give an example of this from V for Vendetta. I want to be very careful with use of copyright. But what I'm going to be showing you now as we go over to these clips. Now, V for Vendetta, I'm not a big fan of, but certain movies can also play their role in amping up a certain level of fear of the state while people thinking that it's, a revolutionary classic. And so in light of the anger towards the modern day comedians, which would be Alec Baldwin and Stephen Colbert, from people that are angrier than they used to be about their president being mocked, although it's not new to our culture, V for Vendetta shows us a dark dystopian reality where, first let's show the clip.
Warm milk. There's nothing better.
I understand you enjoy a glass every night, Chancellor.
Since I was a boy. But you're wrong, Mr. Dietrich. The terrorist was never a serious concern.
Oh, really? Chancellor. Are you saying that he's not still alive and active?
Terrorist has been neutralized.
Oh, my God!
Okay, so what you see from the next clip is the aftermath. The comedian faces consequences in this dystopian reality.
Quickly, hide!
Not so funny now, is it? Funny man.
Puts a black bag on his head. And so that movie came out, I believe, when Barack Obama was the president. And what I want to say, or Bush, I was never a big fan of that because there's certain things in the movie I was not a fan of. And the groupthink behind it, the anonymous rise, seemed really manufactured. The idea of the manufactured peasant revolt. But if we were to discuss predictive programming, we see almost a programming within the Warner Brothers movie that the people that have the gall to mock the chancellor, and this is based, I guess, in the UK and V for Vendetta, but there's parallels there because they're having manufactured events blamed on extremist groups, if you know what I'm talking about. And so these events are going off, and they're basically mocking the idea of the totalitarian police state on TV. You know, the threat from the immigrants was a meme that was coming out from the mainstream media and the chancellor in the movie V for Vendetta. And it was used to control the population, the entire population, under the guise of the immigrant threat. That was the plot in V for Vendetta. So here we see the almost predictive programming meme. And the reason why I say that is because now there's more of a threat towards journalists and things of that nature if they mock the president. And so what I'm getting at is there may be no plans to actually do anything to Colbert. Very, very unlikely. We've seen him mock George W. Bush. He's part of the establishment. So when people think that, oh, Donald Trump's being so attacked by the mainstream media, he's so not giving them ammo with some of the dumb things that he's saying. Oh, he's such a victim. The establishment hates Trump. Well, the greater reality isn't that. Our system doesn't work that way, but it projects that constantly. There used to be a show called Mad TV, and it had tons of caricatures of George Bush and of Clinton, of a lot of things that at the time could have been seen as incredibly disrespectful. And so, again, people talk about the Clinton crime family and the alleged Arkansas murders, yada, yada, yada. We have like countless mockeries of the individual. So are they not assassinating badasses? Like total killer politician, dangerous individuals? They either are or they aren't. All of them are to a certain degree because they're juiced in with the New World Order mafia. But as far as the types of programming that we get in this society, we're programmed to be in eternal fear. And there are things to be concerned with, but ultimately, you know what I'm getting at. If there's the programming to keep your mouth shut, or you might be black bagged, like that guy in V for Vendetta, and then we see the news coming out right now with regards to Trump and the media and his anger towards the media, even though there's elements of the media that support Trump. So just using the term media in a general sense is weird when you see the mainstream media from the East and the West act like they're not the media. It creates a lot of noise. It creates a lot of confusion. Basically, the stage has been set for a lot of bad things to happen within this nation. And a lot of these comedy acts are entertaining people on one side. On the other side, they're foaming at the mouth and they're calling for the heads of some of these comedians. And I would say that is by design. I would say that's part of the script. So, in conclusion, folks, hee hee ha ha, it's kind of like that thing with Terry Wogan and David Icke, right? When he says they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. Sometimes I wonder about Stephen Colbert.